Hello everyone, it's me, Riley. Welcome back! I am very excited because I have been planning on doing this one for quite a long time now. Today we're reviewing Saturation by Brockhampton, the first one of the trilogy. Now, I've been meaning to do this review for quite a while. One of my friends, Mikey, recommended this to me and wanted me to do it. I'm like, you know what? Sure. I told him, yeah, I'll do it. And then didn't do it for like 2 months. I listened to it the first time. I'm like, okay, I'll give this a few more listens, and then I just didn't listen to it again until today. And I finally decided today that I want to go for it. I'm feeling very influenced and very just in the mood to be making videos. I've decided I want to start focusing on this channel a little more. Of course, like I said, Mikey also has a channel, Bloomaluma. I will link down below. He made a review of the Final Fantasy. What am I going on about? The 1975 album that came out a few months ago that I reviewed, the legendary review I made. And he has a more positive take on it, so if you're interested in seeing that, I will link that down below. But Brockhampton Saturation. Brockhampton is... They describe themselves as a boy band, but they're a hip-hop collective group, like the Wu-Tang Clan, kind of, but very, very different from the Wu-Tang Clan, like, thematically and what they do. And they're a very diverse group of many different people, of cultures and sexual orientations, and colors, and it's a cool idea how they're so all-inclusive and all are connected through this, you know, umbrella of loving music and making pop rap. And that's a very interesting idea, but sometimes it hurts them a little bit. It's not always for the better, which I'll get into on these tracks. Now, a lot of people really love Brockhampton, especially the Saturation trilogy. It is something that's very beloved by music fans, and music enthusiasts, and of course Brockhampton fans. And listening to this album, I gave it like 3.5 listens. I listened to the album complete 3 times, and then came back and listened to a couple of the tracks I liked a couple more times. And I can say I do enjoy the album. I just don't enjoy it as much as a lot of music enthusiasts do, and I will get into the problems I have with this album, because I do have quite a few. It's hard to kind of pin down what their style is. It's definitely pop rap, but they play with a lot of different sounds and ideas, from trap to industrial to almost world music inspired on certain tracks. And there's a lot to unpack with it, musically. Lyrically, I found myself not very invested, but we will get to that. Now, my history with Brockhampton, I found them a little later than everyone else. I first listened to them in 2019 with the release of their album Ginger, which I haven't listened to since its release. I thought it was rather boring, but one song that stood out to me was Sugar. And it stood out because the hook on that track is really good. And that's something that Brockhampton, I guess, has always been really good at. They are excellent hook makers. Some of the hooks on this album are excellent. Tracks like Gold and Fake and Bank and Swim all have excellent, excellent hooks that really make the songs as good as they are. Even some of the lesser tracks on this album that I don't quite enjoy, maybe production-wise, or I'm not into the verses, and I struggle enjoying some of these songs, I still look forward to the hooks on them, because the hooks are really that good. This band is very talented when it comes to hooks, and I think very talented overall. I think they do some things on this album that most hip-hop artists couldn't, like the trap sounds. They do very well on the track, Swim. On the track Trip. They do the trap sound very well, whereas I think the trap sound is usually garbage. The people producing it are not talented whatsoever. It's being rushed out as fast as possible to make money and, you know, take advantage of the Spotify system and the streaming system to make as much money as possible. And there's no effort or life put into it. Whereas on a song like Trip, you can tell this band has talent and really cares about their craft, and the fact that they really made this sound so good and sound fulfilled and finished, where so many trap artists couldn't. I honestly think this song passes even some of the best trap artists like Playboi Carti or Travis Scott. And tops those. I think it's a really great track. I'll get to that more when I do my breakdown of the tracks, but I wanted to bring it up to prove the point that I really do have a lot of respect for this band, because they love what they're doing, and they're so extremely talented. Even if I don't necessarily always love what they're doing, they definitely, their hearts are definitely in the right spot. Now, I do, like I said, like this album. But the track opens up with the opening track of the album. It's opened with a song called Heat. And it's pretty bad, I'm gonna be honest. I don't have much good to say about the song. And I think it really has every single one of my problems with Saturation as a whole is on Heat. But it's all very pronounced on this song. It feels like every worst idea this album has is in one song. And what I'm going to say about it applies to a majority of the album. It's sound-wise, production-wise, I'm not into it. It sounds like a ripoff of Tyler, the Creator's Cherry Bomb, which Cherry Bomb is an album I really like, but this just feels like a long-lost B-side that Tyler gave to someone else because it wasn't very good. And I'm sure that's not the case. But that's the only comparison I can make. This song just sounds like a B-side of Cherry Bomb. Why would I listen to this when I can go listen to Cherry Bomb, which is an amazing album? And it's just not a song I'm about whatsoever. And I am kind of starting to get over the whole industrial hip-hop. I feel like everyone who wants to be experimental goes to the industrial sound. And I would really like to hear something new. I know when this album came out in 2017, it wasn't as overdone. It was still very overdone, but it just didn't feel like we were to the point where everyone was doing an industrial hip-hop album. And it gets a little boring. It was just not a great song. And my big problem with it, and a problem with the album as a whole, is there are so many members of this band. At the time, there are like 14 members of this band. That's enough to violate coronavirus rules. This band can't practice with each other because they're over the limit that the WHO and like the CDC like want you to be. This band like legally can be broken up right now. And despite there being 14 members and multiple MCs taking on the mic throughout every song, I just don't feel interested or compelled by any of them. I'm sure you've heard of some of them. I know Kevin Abstract is the one I heard of beforehand. I think he's fairly famous. But they don't really prove themselves at all to be very different. If I didn't know better, I think I wouldn't always notice when the MC switches, on this album at least. They just don't define themselves, and they're not interesting. Their flows are pretty boring. They don't give the best performances. And I just find myself kind of struggling to be interested in them or really care about them, despite there being so many. And you would think, with all these people so diverse, there's black, there's white, there's gay, there's straight. There's such a diverse group of people, you think they would be more interesting, and I'd be able to tell the difference between them, and they would all have their own, unique identities, but really, I do not get that vibe from this album whatsoever. And it's a shame, because I'm sure they're all very talented in their own right, and maybe on the later albums, like Saturation 2 and 3, or Iridescence, maybe when I listen to not Sugar, the album is Ginger, again, I will, maybe they'll have much improved, but on this album, they're not really different from each other, and that goes for all of the tracks on this album, but it's very pronounced on this track, Heat, which is an awful track. And because there are so many of them, some of these tracks get very, very long. Longer than need to be. This one's over 4.5 minutes. And so is the following track, Gold, and the track Boys. And a lot of these songs do start to overstay their welcome as you listen to them. Especially the first 4 tracks on this album, which I am not really a fan of. And Heat, like I said, has these problems. and they're so much more pronounced on this song. And the other big problem is because there are so many people writing, the messages of the songs are very confusing because it feels like they have an idea of the song when they go into it, but because so many people are writing from their own perspectives, eventually the idea of the song gets lost because two people's perspectives on it can be so different, and what they write about can make the themes and the morals and the message of the song become very confusing, and kind of you have no idea what's going on because, Kevin Abstract is doing something completely different from Merlin. They both have different views on what they're talking about, so you really don't understand the message of the song. And this goes through on the entirety of the album, even the tracks I like, but they're all so pronounced on Heat to the point where it's just a pretty terrible song and a pretty terrible opener. And the worst part about it is there's no hook. The song doesn't have one of those great hooks that so many of these tracks do. And between the boring ass beat and the uninteresting MCs, and it's too long, and I just cannot get invested in it, and I can't get invested in the lyrics. Heat is not a good opener, and it's followed up with Gold, which is an improvement on Heat in every way, but still not a great song. That being said, I do really, really like the hook of Gold. Keep a gold chain on my neck, fly as a jet. Boy, better treat me with respect. That's a very interesting hook. I actually really like it. I think the flow is good. And even though I'm not a big fan of the song, I do very much enjoy the hook, and when I'm listening to it, I look forward to getting around to the hook. But overall, not an amazing song. Definitely an improvement over Heat. And then Star and Boys are both decent songs. I prefer Star to Boys. I think either Star or Gold might be the best of these first four tracks. But really, I don't dislike them, but they don't do much for me. I don't really have much to say. And then Tupac, which is this really kind of vibey song. It gives off these super sad vibes and this interesting atmosphere, and it has these electronics on it that are like kind of dreamy, not dreamy, but almost like something like Shooting Stars by the Bag Raiders, like those kind of synths. And it's really good. I really like this song, despite it only being like a little over a minute. What a surprise. The one that's, short is good. And this album starts to turn here from something that I'm not really enjoying to something that kind of impressed me. And then we go into a skit, which is fine. But then the song Fake is so good. It starts off with this really good bass line that immediately, gets you into the song. And then the hook has these blaring, swirling synths throughout the entirety of the hook, and they just make you feel like you're floating. I love the kind of music that just makes you feel like you're ascending to another level, and I think that kind of has that feeling with those synths on the hook. I'm sorry, that's an alarm going off. It goes off at 8 every night. I like this song a lot, and I like the lyrics too. Once again, we do lose a little bit of what's going on because so many people didn't have the different aspects and stuff. But I like the lyric on the hook, I just need to be alone, which I interpret, of course, because there is so much going on here through all these different people and their different ideas. But I just need to be alone stands out for me because a lot of the times when people get sad or upset or feel down or depressed, they isolate themselves, and they just feel like they need to be alone and by themselves. And that's not necessarily a healthy thing, but it feels like something people need to do a lot of the time. And it's really not good for you, and that's why it's sung in this so forlorn, sad way with these synths and kind of a sad vibe to it. This song has a very sad vibe to it. I mean, of course, I'm not taking the band's advice. Look what I'm doing right now. But that being said, I do really like the song. It's one of the best songs on the album. I do feel it very much, and I just really, really love the hook. And of course, this does have the same problems I mentioned before the entire album does, but this song has so much good about it. And the verses are a little more interesting, and of course, the hook is just so good. Of course, I said I love the hook on a song like Gold, and Star, but the hook on this song is just so much better than those. And it really stands out. It's a song I really like, one of the highlights in the album. And then Bank is a really good song, might be my favorite song on the album. It's very unique production-wise, because they kind of have this pop rap electronica sound on Fake that I really liked, and they kind of had a more industrial sound on the first couple of tracks. And then this track starts off with like Afro beat and almost like African tribal drums, and then some steel drums, kind of more classical world music, some xylophones, and that makes up the beat. And I really like that, actually. I think it's a very, very solid beat, very good production on this song. And, the hook, of course, is good, still the only one I do that with. And what I like really the most about it is the fact that they don't just keep the same beat the entire time. As every verse comes, they add something new to the beat. So it starts out with just kind of the steel drum, xylophone, and Afro beat, and then the second verse comes in, and they add some, like, kind of, not quite industrial, but some loud synths in the background, some electronics. Okay, and it keeps it fresh, and you don't get bored of this beat, it just keeps getting better. And then the next verse, they implement these loud 808s that are booming, and this percussion, and it adds even more to the song. And then by the time the song ends, there's like a flute playing, and they just keep adding things to the beat over and over again that keep the song fresh. You never get bored of the beat because they keep throwing new things in, and it's excellent. I really like this song. I think it's probably the highlight of this album. Lyrically, I still have a hard time getting invested because I'm not invested in the MCs themselves. Production-wise, Brockhampton is extremely talented, but on this album, the MCs do not interest me whatsoever. But a lot of the time, production is what's more important to me on hip-hop anyway. I mean, that's why Kanye West is my favorite hip-hop artist. He's not necessarily the most, skilled rapper. Like, Eminem is a wildly great rapper, technically, but his beats aren't always the best, and he's kind of an asshole. But that's besides the point. Whereas Kanye has really interesting beats and ideas and production and experimentation. And of course, any hip-hop album I do, I have to mention him. But that being said, that is kind of where I come from, my hip-hop background. It starts with him, so of course I value production over the MCs themselves. And I really like this song. So yeah. And then the song Trip comes, which is another song I really like. I talked about earlier how this song kind of takes the trap sound, but puts actual effort into it, and care and love into it, and turns this kind of bland, lazy style of music into something really great and really artistic. So it has those booming 808s that so much trap music does. It's got the blaring hi-hats that all trap music does. It's got the auto-tune, singing and rapping, but instead of just throwing it together, they take the time, they mix it, they produce it, and it turns out really beautiful. The sound is done really well, and the trap sound can be amazing when it's done right. It's this dark, kind of psychedelic atmosphere of hip-hop is what trap is, but they don't ever put the time or effort into it, whereas Brockhampton put so much effort into the trap sound that it becomes almost something completely different and much superior, if you ask me. This song is great, and it's got some synths on it, and some really great piano notes, which kind of drive the beat forward as well, and are kind of icing on the cake of this advanced trap sound, these piano notes that go along with it. And I do really like the song, and I actually got invested in this song lyrically and meaning-wise as well, because I've interpreted this as hating the position where you are, like hating your high school or hating your hometown. The line, let me find it, I'm searching through the lyrics, we're getting wasted, trapped in the suburbs, we're suffocating. This song, I interpret it as being stuck in a place you hate, around people you don't relate to, and people you kind of can't stand being with, and you're stuck in your hometown or your school or whatever, and you just hate it. And different ways of coping with that. For example, one of these MCs is coping with it through drugs and getting high and partying. He hates where he is, he hates the people around him, so he's just going to do drugs to ignore that fact. Whereas another MC comes in and talks about being himself, and how even though all the people around him are one way, and a way he doesn't like, and they may look down upon him for not being that way, he's still going to be himself, and he's still going to do the things he loves and act the way he's always acted. He's not going to pretend to be someone who he's not, for people he hates. And I do really like the message of the song, and I think it's interesting. I like the fact that the message doesn't get lost through the multiple MC's depictions of it, and I think the auto-tune and stuff kind of help them be a little more interesting because of kind of the experiments of the sound on their voices in particular, make them a little less dry to listen to. I really like the song Trip. And then the song Swim is another song I really like, and it almost reminds me of like a hip-hop take on shoegaze and My Bloody Valentine. It has that really dreamy noise on it that I absolutely love, especially on the hook. In certain parts of the song. There's a certain part where just a bunch of auto-tune voices start singing and rapping, and the dreamy noise is out there, just going all over the place, and some synths. And the song starts off with almost something like a glide guitar, a guitar under a lot of effects and pedals and amplifiers and stuff to make it sound very out there and very dreamy, like on a shoegaze song, something like My Bloody Valentine. That kind of makes up the beat of the song, and I think that's really great. I like the whole shoegaze direction of this track, and I think it hits some points where it's pretty gorgeous. Yeah, and this song, lyrically, is also another one that's very much improved that I can get kind of invested in. I find this to be almost like he is in a relationship with somebody, but he knows it can't last forever, and he's looking at the future and what the future holds. He knows that nothing lasts forever, things change, his life is going to be different in 10 years, maybe this girl's not going to be beside him, and he doesn't care, though, because he's, like the line says, I love it on you, though, I love it on you. He still is going to love this person, even though maybe in the future she'll cheat on him, or maybe in the future it won't work out, but he's still going to enjoy his time with her. And he says, fall in love, but it ain't going to last. He knows that the future has so much in store. Maybe he loves this person now, but like I said, like he says, nothing lasts forever. And I like the kind of forward-looking lyricism of this. A lot of the times I find songs are either introspective at someone at the current moment, or retrospective, looking in the past at stuff that happened, or people you knew in the past, or what your life was like before. It's not often you hear a song that looks at what your life might be like in the future, or where you're going to be headed in 10 years, and what your relationship is going to be like in 10 years. That's kind of an interesting concept that you don't see every day. And on top of that kind of dreamy shoegaze sound, excellent stuff. This song is, once again, very good. And this album just had a great 5-track run from Tupac to Swim, but sadly, nothing can last forever when we get to the song Bump, which, despite me talking so much smack about Heat at the beginning of the album, this song is even worse. The thing with Heat is that everything I don't like about this album on Heat was completely brought out and kind of exaggerated and was so obvious on this song, whereas Bump just breaks all the rules of this album, especially because the hook is so obnoxious on it. I honestly cannot stand the hook on this song. It makes me want to pull my hair out. It's so bad. The repetition of bump, bump, bump in my trunk it just sounds something extremely childish, and like I said, it's just very obnoxious. And I have no idea what the song is about either. because it's definitely about doing crimes, but I can't tell if it's about murdering somebody or smuggling drugs, because you get that vibe from all of the lyrics. You get both vibes, so it can be bump, 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 as in a body bumping in the back of your trunk, or drugs bumping in the back of your trunk. Who's to say? I don't know, but the song's garbage. And remember how I compared some of the earlier tracks to Cherry Bomb? This is also much like Cherry Bomb, with kind of that industrial loud sound. And also much like Cherry Bomb, the mixing on this track is garbage, and the production is really bad. It's like they knew this track was bad, so they just didn't do a good job with it and just threw it on the album anyway. But unlike Cherry Bomb, the song is garbage. Cherry Bomb's a really good album. Maybe one day I'll review Cherry Bomb. And also, this song, just at some point randomly, I think it does it 2 or 3 times, goes into this little, like, acoustic-led passage, where this guy's singing with a little bit of autotune, so nice and cute and sweet after all this dark, messed up shit. But it's cringe. I hate it. It's obnoxious. And after every time I hear it, I'm just like, God. This song is really bad. I don't know why they put this on here. I mean, there's already 17 tracks on this album. It could have been much shorter, but whatever. It's not like it's 4.5 minutes like so many other songs on this album. It's only 2.5. But it is very bad. And then there's the song Cash, which at this point the album goes back to being pretty solid, but never reaches the same heights as that 5-track run I was talking about before, with songs like Swim and Trip, and Fake. It never gets quite back to that point of being that good, but it's still pretty decent. Cash opens up with some kind of grungy sounding guitars, like something like Nirvana would have played in the 90s. And it's interesting enough. The song has a pretty good hook. Get Money, big bands, simple bands. Kevin Abstract sings the hook there, or I guess raps the hook, and I guess the hook is pretty good. This song's okay. It's decent. It's nothing great. Just something I don't have much to say about, on a lot of these tracks, because, like I said, I don't find, Kevin or Merlin to be all that interesting. I'm just not into it as much, but it's still a decent song production-wise. Not as good as the tracks before, but still pretty solid. And then Milk is the next song. Going over the skits, I don't think I mentioned the skits. There are 3, and they're only like a couple of seconds. They don't bother me at all. They're there. It's not like interludes and skits on other albums that go on for way too long. They're like 30 seconds tops, and then they're done. And then Milk is the next song, and it's pretty good. Pretty much that track, it's super corny. It almost reminds me of a Macklemore song, production-wise and lyrically. It's just all about being yourself, which is fine, I guess. It's super corny, but it's enjoyable. I like it enough, and I think this is actually where the individual rappers stand out the most, especially Merlin. I think Merlin's Merlin's verse, that he drops is pretty great, and I think actually there's a lot of personality in it, especially how it opens it up with like, "Hi, I'm Merlin." I like that. I thought it was funny. Good stuff. Like I said, it's cheesy, but I enjoy it. I like the hook. I gotta get better at being me. That's probably okay. I've only listened to it 3 times. But I do like the hook quite a bit. And at one point, one of the MCs goes into detail about how he almost lost his father and how that made him feel, especially knowing that so many of his friends either didn't have dads or dads died, and how he would have felt if that would have happened because he was like close with his dad. And I think that's one of the more emotional parts in the album, and one of the parts that was kind of showed you more into these guys' souls and what they're all about. And I think this is why this is one of the better tracks on the album, because it's like the only track on the album where I really feel these guys' personalities coming out, and being out there, and something I can engage with, instead of just being bland boy number 1, bland boy number 2. So yeah. And, for what it's worth, I do think it's fun. It's cheesy, but it's fun. It's not a bad song. Yeah, then there's Face and Waste, which are both, once again, decent songs, but really nothing I have anything to go in depth about. So yeah, I'm sorry if this review was a little messy. I just didn't find much to talk about for a lot of these tracks, because despite enjoying it, I didn't engage with it a lot, especially lyrically, and vocally. The MCs themselves just did not impress me whatsoever, which maybe on later albums they will, but as a whole, listening to this album, it did not give me any impressions of who Brockhampton were as a band. The only impression I got from a couple of tracks is they really liked Cherry Bomb by Tyler, the Creator, and decided to rip that off a couple of times. That's the only impression I ever got from this band. I cannot tell you who Brockhampton is, really what they stand for, what they're like, their personalities. A very good album made by a fairly bland group of MCs, honestly. And maybe on Saturation 2 and 3 and Iridescence that gets better, but on this album, man, they just kind of bored me. Production-wise, though, I like a lot of the production on tracks like Fake, and Bank, and Trip, and Swim. The songs I really, really loved and went off about on here. So, I don't really know where I want to rate this. I'm in between either a 6+ or a 7-. I think I'm going to go for a 7- just because this band is very talented production-wise, and I know they definitely enjoy what they're doing, and I have a lot of respect for them. And then songs like Fake, and Bank, and Trip, and Swim, and Tupac are all very good, and some really good hooks on the album. So yeah, I'm feeling a 7-. Not a bad record at all. I'll probably return to it and listen to it a few more times, honestly. Yeah, if you want me to check out Saturation 2 and 3 and review it, like this video, let me know, because I will eventually get around to it. I'm going to be trying to focus on my channel a little more. I might review the new Remo Drive album and new albums as they come out. So yeah, that's about it. That's all I have for you today. Like I said, I'm sorry if this is messy. I just kind of have had a little bit on my mind, so didn't really organize all my thoughts the best today. I've never been really good at that anyway, but if there is one thing I am good at, it's discussing music and discussing how I feel about it. So yeah, I'll see you all on Side B.